From monkeys holding people to ransom, to pandas faking their own pregnancy, it's fair to say that some animals are clever enough to completely outsmart us humans.
Amazing!
The animals in this video are definitely one of a kind, so stay tuned unless you don't mind falling victim to these tricks. Here are 10 of the most outstanding examples of animals outsmarting us humans. Number 10. SHREK the sheep. If you look closely enough at that cloud, you'd actually see a sheep hidden inside of it. It outwitted its owners by avoiding haircuts for over 6 years. It did this by hiding in caves in order to grow that huge white afro. SHREK, as the New Zealand sheep has since been named, gathered over 60 pounds of wool during his evasion stunt, which is enough to make 20 suits. After his escapade, SHREK became a national icon and was taken to see the New Zealand Prime Minister on his 10th birthday. The best thing that's ever happened to him, other than, having 60 pounds of wool offloaded from his delicate sheep frame. Number 9. Mud Creek Grizzly Bear. Us humans have used bears for our amusement for years. We've trained them to do incredible things like ride bikes, but the bear in this example refused to take any shit from us. A team of biologists out to research bears in the late 90s set up their traps in the Glacier National Park. Once the scientists had fled their bear catching site, which was complete with bait, traps and cameras, one bear saw a chance for sabotage and hustled hard. He started by tearing down the markers that researchers used to find the bear catching station. Then, using an arsenal of sticks and stones, he set off the bait-laden traps, which finally allowed him to collect a free meal. Finally, instead of sticking up his middle finger to the camera, the bear ripped down all the CCTV and beat the shit out of it. The funniest thing is that this wasn't just random mindless rage. This was calculated destruction. Every time the scientists set up a news station, the same thing happened. I'd like to think that somewhere there's a team of grizzly bears in lab coats and glasses who nodded and took notes. Number 8. Kelly the Dolphin. Dolphin trainers at the Institute for Marine Mammal Studies thought they were onto a money-saving endeavour by teaching their dolphins to clean their own tanks. Kelly the Dolphin was one of the subjects who was taught to find and pick litter from her tank by being rewarded with fishy food each time she brought litter to her trainers. Life was sweet for the keepers. The pool was kept clean with little effort on their behalf, and the dolphins were happy enough with their little game. But Kelly wasn't satisfied. Rather than playing along with their silly game, Kelly stored litter under a rock at the bottom of her tank. She would tear chunks off a single piece of litter and multiplied her returns. But, like all great entrepreneurs, she saw other opportunities for more profit. One day she lured in a gull and presented it to her trainers, which yielded even greater fishy returns. Taking note, she stored bait under her rock hiding place to lure other gulls in each time the trainers were present. Eventually, once her goals for food startup was making steady returns, she taught her offspring, who also adapted their feeding behaviour. It's probably a fledgling family business among the dolphin community. Number 7. Japanese crows. Most animals must get pretty pissed off when humans invade their habitat. Probably not the crow though. And it's not just because they enjoy aiming their excrement at us, but because these bright birds have adapted in other clever ways to use us. Instead of building nests in trees out of twigs like normal birds, they've exploited Japanese telecommunication lines by stealing wiring and building their nests snuggled tightly amongst the cables supplying electricity to the city. They've wreaked havoc, causing city blackouts, and even shutting down a high-speed bullet train in 2007. In response, one power company thought they found a solution by forming a sort of crow patrol to seek and destroy any crow's nests built in electricity-laden locations. After destroying over 600 crow homes in its first 3 years of existence, these pesky birds decided enough was enough and formed their own cunning plan. They started building fake nests in the city, so that the real ones were almost a needle in a haystack. Not only is this an ingenious way of reducing the odds of a nest being destroyed, but they would also have vacant nests to relocate to should they be made homeless. Also, more nests mean more blackouts, giving crows added time to build new homes while we scramble to get power back up. Due to their master plans, many Japanese people now consider them pests. Number 6. Karta, the orangutan. This 27-year-old orangutan from Adelaide Zoo has a reputation for being rather difficult to manage, especially in May 2009, when one of her stunts forced the whole zoo to close down. She recognised that the zoo staff weren't too keen on the idea of her freedom, as her enclosure had an electric fence and beyond that, a high wall, in order to prevent her from escaping. But apparently, that didn't faze her. First, she short-circuited the electric wires using branches, and then made her way through no man's land towards the great outer wall of her enclosure. Once again, with logical clarity most of us can't imagine on a good day, Karta piled up vegetation on the boundary of her enclosure as a makeshift stepladder. After glimpsing enough of the outside world to be unimpressed by it, Karta then climbed back over the wall, down the ladder, and back to her enclosure. Number 5. Uluwatu monkeys. The temple of Uluwatu is home to a troop of remarkably audacious, long-tailed macaques that have developed probably one of the most cunning and devious foraging methods. With over 300 monkeys roaming the temple, offerings or tourist scraps aren't enough. So these famous monkeys have turned into mobsters, using downright criminal activities to get their food. These cheeky monkeys recognise the value we place on our phones, slippers, sunglasses and hats. So instead of targeting food, they target and rob people of their personal possessions. They're seriously good at it as well. However, they'll not be wearing the slippers or browsing YouTube on the phone. This daylight robbery is still about food, but not in the way you'd expect. They use the belongings to barter for food, so in essence they hold their victims to ransom, negotiating for best pickings. It's thought that one individual monkey invented this brazen behaviour and helped to teach the rest of the group how to pull off a successful crime. It's certainly one of the best examples of how animals have turned the tables on us humans. Number 4. Lusha, the chimpanzee. In a popular personal finance book, economist Burton Malkiel claimed that a blindfolded monkey throwing darts at a newspaper's financial pages could select a portfolio that would do just as well as one carefully selected by experts. It's a bold claim, and one that was actually tested and somewhat proven by Wall Street Journal journalists in 1988. However, more recently in 2010, according to Moscow TV, one chimpanzee from Russia defied all expectations by picking an astonishingly successful portfolio for almost $30,000. Given the task, circus chimp Lusha paused briefly to think, and eventually opted for a balanced portfolio of 8 state-owned and private financial and mining companies. After a year, her picks amazingly outperformed 94% of Russian bankers, while Lusha only received a small salary in bananas. Accordingly, everyone was shocked and claimed that the whiz-kid bankers should be sent to the circus instead of receiving their hefty perks and salaries. Investment analysts angrily claimed she got lucky, but she was probably just using incredibly advanced formulas beyond their understanding. All this time, humans have been studying the nuances of the stock market when they simply could have thrown a few darts. Number 3. Aihin, the panda. Pandas are rare animals, and only around a couple of thousand exist in the world today. Of those that are alive, around 300 live in captivity, so any news of a panda falling pregnant is pretty good. Consequently, pandas receive royal treatment when pregnancy symptoms occur, to exploit the excessive kindness we afford them when going through labour. Some pandas have thanked their keepers by exhibiting particularly devious learned behaviour. This goes some way to prove that these pandas may be the smartest bears out there, even more so than the rampant grizzly previously mentioned. What do? They fake symptoms of pregnancy. Although phantom pregnancies are common among pandas, keepers of the 6-year-old panda named Aihin from the Chengdu Giant Panda Breeding Research Center are adamant that the animal faked her condition by reducing her appetite and mobility to receive nicer food and round-the-clock care. Journalists and zoo staff were left with egg on their face after turning up in large numbers to witness what they thought was the first live birth of a panda. Interestingly, this isn't the only case. Another panda at Taipei Zoo was accused of doing the same thing. Number 2. Daisy the cow. Cows might look like dumb animals, but they're actually capable of a lot more intelligence than we've been led to believe, as one Irish cow demonstrated. Farmer Tom Grant, whose herd of cattle kept escaping each night, decided to keep his cattle under close camera surveillance to find out how they were outsmarting him. He was amazed when he installed CCTV, only to discover that it was an inside job. As you're about to see, Daisy is actually a bovine Einstein. Using her nimble head and tongue, Daisy was able to move the gate, and milked it for all it was worth by freeing herself and her pals so that they could roam the fields. Having found out the mystery, the farmer got the last laugh by installing new security measures, but it's probably still best to keep an eye on Daisy. After all, she might want to explore the Milky Way. Number 1. Stoffel, the honey badger. For the first spot, we considered clever cats, dexterous domesticated dogs, and egg-headed elephants, but this Houdini of the animal kingdom is most deserving of recognition, due to the multitude of ways it persistently outsmarted its keeper. If you've heard of the honey badger before, you'll know that they're vicious creatures, and even recognised as one of the most fearless animals in the world. However, you probably didn't know that they were also extremely intelligent. Stoffel the honey badger is the best example of these masters of mayhem. After a series of escapes, his keeper Brian introduced a female to keep him company and take his mind off the freedom business he was previously pursuing. Unfortunately, this failed spectacularly because now he had a servant to open the locked gates for him. After recapture, Stoffel persistently showed how hell-bent he was about getting out of any enclosure. At great expense, Brian thought the solution would be to build a sort of honey badger Alcatraz. He was wrong. The first night in the new highly secured pen, Stoffel escaped by climbing a tree in the enclosure to reach the wall. Learning from this, all the trees were cut out of the enclosure and Stoffel was captured and brought back into his new home. It still wasn't enough. Like Karta the orangutan, this badger found another way to escape. He dug up rocks and piled them at the edge of the enclosure, climbing over the wall and escaping again. Finally, all rocks were removed from the enclosure, and after another recapture, Stoffel had lost his game to his human captors once and for all. Brian, his keeper, was then awoken in the middle of the night by a burglar. Except, it wasn't a burglar, it was Stoffel. The badger had devised a stepladder out of mud this time, because of course, all the rocks had vanished. These animals are definitely some of the smartest out there, and perhaps they don't purposefully mean to show us up. But what I'd like to know is, which one do you think showed the most intelligence? Thanks for watching, and subscribe to Be Amazed.